Am I on? Good morning. My name is John Favre. I'm chairman of the State Election Board for Georgia. I don't do interviews and I don't do pressers, but I'm here today, and I want to welcome all y'all to the meeting today. We have some important business to take care of. The purpose of this presser this morning is for this board to come out and encourage all the voters of Georgia to get out there and vote. It doesn't really matter to us who you support. What's important to us is that you vote and that you exercise your right to vote, and that you vote early. Notice I didn't say vote often, vote early. And we want you to get out there and exercise that right. The earlier you vote, the better, whether it's by absentee ballot or in person, but we just want you out there. I am joined today by Dr. Janice Johnson, who's a member of the board, and Janelle King, who's also a member of the board, who have a few comments that they want to make. Dr. Johnson?
Thank you, Don, and good morning to all of you. It's wonderful to be here. It's our first press conference, and I'm here today to make a public service announcement. In the past several months, the public, the press, the state election board, and our elected officials have become aware of mail delivery delays in the Atlanta area and in Georgia. Although the post office is continuing to implement its new processing plans, the Postmaster General says that delivery delays may continue for the next several months. The State Election Board shares these concerns in this election year that the post office may not be a reliable method for return of absentee ballots by mail. We encourage all eligible voters to vote in person, during early voting, or on Election Day. For those eligible Georgia voters that must use absentee-by-mail voting or desire to use absentee-by-mail voting, please return your voted ballot directly to the election office. If you must rely on the Postal Service, please send your voted ballot in as early as possible. Remember, the polls close at 7 o'clock on Election Day. Only the ballots that are in the election office by 7 p.m. on Election Day will be counted. Georgia voters who are in the military or live overseas are allowed 3 extra days for the delivery of their ballots. Again, the polls close at 7 o'clock on Election Day, and the ballots must be in the election office. Have a plan. Make sure you have the opportunity to vote so that your vote may be counted. Thank you very much. I'll turn it over to Janelle.
Thank you, Dr. Jan. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So good morning. In light of all that has transpired and every headline that has been written, I just want everyone to know that I am laser focused on my intentions. And today I stand before you to speak directly to the voters of Georgia. Never in a million years did I think that we would be debating whether we should have multiple methods of counting ballots, whether we should deter illegal immigrants from voting in our elections, or whether speed is more important than accuracy. But here we are. I've spoken to the media. I've spoken to auxiliary groups. I've had individual conversations surrounding the rule that allows election officials the right to a reasonable inquiry. This rule has led to several questions and concerns due to the narrative that the rule has somehow will cause mass decisions to not certify in the election for whatever reason. To clear things up, because I haven't spoken directly to you, county board members have always had the right to certify or not to certify. It is not a ministerial act. It is an option afforded to every board member. The option is present because of the legal document each must sign. This document states that you are certifying the election that it is accurate, that it is perfect, and that it is free of fraud, and I'm paraphrasing. Considering we have seen board members choose not to certify in past elections, I am of the thought process that making the decision more transparent and data more accessible would prevent this option from occurring. To be clear, the option to certify or not to certify rests on county boards, not the state board. The real question, I believe, is whether or not this inquiry will extend the certification process, thus breaking federal laws that provide a deadline for certification as a board. The answer is no. The rule clearly states that the inquiry must take place within the certification week. And if the board decides not to certify within that allotted time frame specified by the law, the board would be breaking the law and also violating this rule. Another concern is whether our actions that are being taken are too close to the election day. Well, I find it absolutely fascinating that the same media outlets that are questioning the timing of our decisions also find it completely normal to swap out a presidential candidate 4 months from an election. To answer the question directly, it's about speaking for the entire board, yes, I am absolutely considering time. But I also consider the job that we have been tasked to do, and sometimes it doesn't always agree. Unfortunately, a few bad apples, a few miscounts here or there, a few double counts will lead to an overshadowing of the great work that many of our election offices are doing time and time again. So this leaves us in a very difficult position. Do we maintain the status quo because it's easier, or do we make a few adjustments so that we can be better? I thank many election directors and staff who have provided solutions rather than criticisms, and the many who are working day in and day out to secure our elections and to ensure they are handled with care. This election year, I encourage you, the voters of Georgia, to truly understand that we are not living in the land of the free, and we are certainly not housing the brave if we do not have faith in our elections. We are not a democracy. We are a representative republic. Our elected officials are chosen by you to work for you. While we all can't have our own personal representatives, we can all hold those accountable. The first and foremost effective means of accountability is at the ballot box. So this message is not to those who benefit from the opportunities that present themselves in the midst of chaos. This isn't a partisan issue. This message, again, is to the voters of Georgia. We cannot get comfortable with some errors in our election process, because today it's a small error. Tomorrow, that small error could determine the fate of an election. We are raising the standard because the right to elect our leaders is a fundamental core principle of a republic. Thank you. I guess we can take a few questions. How much time do we have?
Y'all can take questions. I'm gonna go to the meeting.
Okay. All right. Well, we don't have much time, but thank you. All right.
Yeah, we appreciate all y'all attending today. We have some important business to attend to, as you know, and hope you will come upstairs and watch it. Thanks.
A second on that one, didn't it?
Y'all ready? We'll call to order the Friday, September 20th, 2024 meeting of the Georgia State Election Board. My name is John Favre. I'm chairman of the board. I'm joined today by Dr. Janice Johnson, Member Janice Johnson, Member Rick Jeffries, Member Sarah Gazal, and Member Janelle King, and our executive director, Mike Cohn, and our paralegal, Alexandra, the one that does all the work. Thank you, Alexandra. We're going to start the meeting today with our invocation, Pledge of Allegiance. Dr. Johnson, would you lead us in our invocation, please? Oh.
Thank you. God, our Father, how great is your creation. May your will be done here today in this room. And may goodness and mercy bless each person that is present or watching this meeting today. Our hearts are broken following the recent loss of 4 innocent people at Appalachia High School. We grieve for the families and friends of these victims and other injured children. We pray that you will provide them comfort and strength in this time of great need. Oh God, end the violence, stop the shootings, remove the hate and mental illness, and above all, protect our children, their teachers, and any person that is vulnerable to acts of violence and hate. Dear God, may we work today toward unity and harmony as we conduct this meeting and perform our duties. Give us wisdom, discernment, courage to make sound decisions without fear of threat, intimidation, or bullying. God, you are the power and the glory forever. Amen.
Amen. Member Jeffries, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Member Jeffries. Thank you. Member Johnson. Now, for a few ground rules, we have a lot of people here today. I'm glad to see that all the seats are filled. I want to thank the Georgia State Patrol for helping us out this morning. We couldn't do this without you. We have a wide variety of people here. We have members of the public. Well, we're all members of the public, right? We have state legislators here with us this morning. We have a lot of press people here with us. We have a lot of representatives of the counties here with us, and we have members of the public. And all I ask is for courtesy and consideration. You're going to hear a lot of speaking today on both sides of these rules that are being proposed today. And, you know, the last thing we need is a lot of cheering and excess comments and all that stuff. If you want to be respected when you get to speak, then you need to respect other people when they speak. We all have opinions. This board has varying opinions. You know, we're not, surprisingly, we're not all in agreement on things. But we expect the same from the members of the audience today. We hope that you'll be respectful of those people that are coming up to speak before us today and provide their valuable input to this board. This board looks to all of you to help us make decisions in what we do. And so we can't properly evaluate that if we have a lot of yelling and screaming and things like that. So we're just asking for people to please be kind and respectful to your neighbors and to those speaking. We're going to start today with the first item on the agenda. Member Johnson.
Chairman Previer, I would like to request to amend the agenda.
And what is your request?
I would like to request hearing of the petition of Ms. Sally Grubbs. It was submitted more than 20 days ago. I have provided a copy of this petition regarding storage of returns, and I would request that we hear this petition after lunch so that each board member can review this, although we have received it by email in the past.
The request was made to add it to this agenda, and I denied that request based on the fact that this meeting was set for the sole purpose of hearing petitions and rules that were already in the process. And we're going to put that petition on the October 8th meeting, which is, as you know, less than 2 weeks from now. This board hadn't had time, I don't think, to properly consider that. I certainly haven't looked at it myself, and I don't think that looking at it between now and lunchtime is sufficient. We have other things to do. I mean, I think that petition certainly can be heard at our October meeting and decide upon them. We've all had time to take a look at it and to evaluate. We haven't received guidance from anybody on it. We haven't received guidance from Secretary of State's office, from the Attorney General's office, from any other members of the public that I know of. And I just don't think it's appropriate to add that to this meeting.
Mr. Chair, different opinion. The time for petitions is simply that, a petition. It can be accepted for consideration of rulemaking or rejected. It's a simple one-paragraph amendment to the rule for storage of returns. And if a rule is accepted for consideration, there is the 30-day period where we gather comments and opinions and further study. This rule was sent to us more than 3 weeks ago. It was in our email. I'm sure we read all of our emails, maybe. I would I make a motion that we accept this to add to the agenda for after lunch.
Well, there's certainly no urgency, given that you do have a 30-day review period, and this would not come into effect before the election. So I'm not quite sure why the urgency of having it today versus having it on October the 6th or any meeting thereafter, since it would not come into play until after the election anyway. So it doesn't make sense for me to, frankly, hear that rule today, especially when this board hadn't had time to properly consider it.
Well, Mr. Chair, since there has been so much comment and so much concern and so much angst over timing and closeness to the election and comments that have been pouring in through our emails, this petition is timely because it involves a timely consideration, if it's accepted and if it's adopted, that would provide for proper storage of returns for the upcoming election. So waiting even until October 8th is time wasted and of concern that, again, there will be a howl of voices that it is too late to accept this or adopt it or implement it for this current election.
As I said earlier, I think that adding this petition at the very last minute is not the responsible thing for this board to do. The chair is going to exercise its option to not add that to the agenda today. If you want to make a motion to overrule the chair, then that certainly is your prerogative.
Mr. Chair, I appeal the decision of the chair.
Are you making a motion?
Yes.
And your motion is?
Second. Let's just hear it. I don't understand why we can't just hear it. It's a very short petition. Ms. Grubb is already present in the room. I don't understand why we can't just hear it.
Well, this board hadn't had time to properly consider it before we initiate rulemaking procedures. We need to take a look at it, and receiving it the day of the meeting.
Do you think we're going to get through all of this today? Or you think we're going
I'm
to be back
hopeful
on
we
Monday?
can.
You think you're going to try to get through it?
Well, if we were able to go through
I
the
see.
agenda as it was, we might could have, but it appears there's going to be some alterations to it. So
Well, I mean, adding one petition to be heard, I mean, it'll give me more information. I would like to hear directly from the petitioner. That'll help me to make decisions.
well, and that can be done on October the 6th. Like I said, this will not take place before the election this year, so I don't see the reason to go ahead and put it on the agenda today.
Well, if it's not going to affect anything, I don't see the reason to keep debating it and wasting time.
But we haven't debated it. We haven't heard it
I'm
yet.
talking
So-
about this debate here of putting it on the agenda. or not.
Okay. We have a motion to appeal the chair's decision. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Yes, Member Gazal.
I have a hard time understanding how our mantra is transparency, and we are talking about debating a rule that nobody in the public has seen.
To the point, I mean, I have a challenge as well, and that's whether or not we're following procedures. If she presented it and submitted it within the right time frame to be on the agenda today, then it should be on the agenda today.
Any further comments? We have a motion and a second to appeal the chair's decision. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed signify by saying nay.
Nay.
The chair votes nay. The ayes carry 3-2. Do you have another motion?
Mr. Chair, I have another amendment to the agenda. Under the heading of new business, there is an item, discussion of voter challenges complaints. This was an item that I asked to be put on the agenda, and unbeknownst to me, a lawsuit, writ of mandamus was filed in DeKalb County, and it appears that an emergency complaint has been delivered to us yesterday. I would like to include this as consideration of hearing this complaint concerning 230 challenges to be added to the new business item of voter challenges, and request that it be moved up on the agenda for discussion for after lunch.
I think that we've had a lot of people who have come here from afar to talk about these petitions, and altering this agenda, continuing to alter this agenda, forcing these individuals to stay longer is just inappropriate. The board has had this agenda for several days and had opportunities to make revisions to this agenda, and yet it seems over and over again when we get to the meetings, alterations are made to the agenda at the last minute. Is this a legal issue that you're wanting to discuss?
This was sent to us as a complaint of violations of OCGA 212230 by DeKalb County by Ms. Marcy McCarthy.
And it can be appropriately discussed during the discussion of voter challenges complaints?
It could.
Then we'll add it to that at that time slot. The chair would like to leave the agenda as is for consideration of people who have traveled to come here to talk about their petitions.
Mr. Chair, in consideration of the time and out of respect for the petitioners, I will add this to the new business item.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to change the agenda today?
Motion to adjourn.
I would second that one in a minute. The first item on the next item on the agenda is the State Election Board meetings and hearings, approval of the minutes from the August 6th and August 7th meeting, which is tab number 1 in your board book. If the board would take a minute to look at those meeting minutes, if you haven't already reviewed them. Are there any corrections, alterations, or additions to be made to the minutes?
Make a motion to approve.
We have a motion from Member Jeffries to approve the minutes of the August 6th and 7th State Election Board. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second from Member King. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Member Johnson.
Yes, I'd like to request that the in the minutes from August 19th that the rule number be included with each of the petitions. Some of in the minutes, the petitions do not provide the rule number for the petition.
Member Johnson, that we're working on the 6th and the 7th now. That'll be the next item on the agenda to
sorry.
discuss. So we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes from the August 6th and 7th, 2024 meeting of the State Election Board. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Member Johnson.
it's the same applies for the meeting of August 6th and 7th.
You want the petition numbers added where?
Where procedure matters petition for A, B, C, D, E, and F, that the rule number be included as the petition for amendment of the State Election Board presented by John Verveer after remarks. That the actual rule number petition would be included to provide information for future reference.
We have Member Johnson has requested that the rule numbers be added to the sections or petitions. A, B, C, D, E, and F. Without consent, we'll do that. Alexander, can you add that? Okay. 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 We'll make that alteration. Are there any other alterations to the minutes? With the alteration and the board's approval, recommended by Dr. Johnson, we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes with that alteration. Any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing no opposition, so moved. Carries 4-0. Next item on the agenda is to approve the minutes from the August 19th, 2024 meeting. Member Johnson, I believe you had some comments about that?
The request to amend the minutes to reflect the rule referred to under, it has for A and B, but not C, D, E, and F. And G and H.
Well, the rule is listed on A and B,
Right, correct.
C, D, E, and F, not on G, not on H, or not on E. Okay, D, E, F, G, and H. Okay.
Thank you.
Alexander, can you add that? Okay. Without any dissent by the board, we'll do that. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes as presented with the alterations made by Dr. Johnson?
Second.
We need somebody to make a motion.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion to
As
approve.
amended.
We have a second? We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of approving the minutes as presented with the alterations recommended by Dr. Johnson, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing no opposition, so moved. The next item on the agenda is my favorite portion of the meeting, is to hear public comment. Executive Director Cohn is going to be our gatekeeper. For those that might be in overflow rooms, Executive Director Cohn will call out the first 5 people to speak. Then we get near the end of that, he'll call the next 5 people. And if you would quickly hurry down here to take your place speaking, we'd appreciate that. We don't want to be looking for where's Waldo. And we will allot 2 minutes to individuals to speak, please. And at the end of your 2 minutes or near the end of your 2 minutes, you'll hear a light tap like this, which is your warning that your time is about up. And if you exceed it, then you'll hear heavier and heavier and heavier taps, because Executive Director Cohn can be quite heavy-handed with that gavel. So, Executive Director Cohn.
All right, we're going to go through we got 30 on the agenda. We're going to go through those, again, as he said, 5 at a time. The first 5 is going to be Mason Hill, Natalie Crawford, Brooke Shiner, Barbara Gooby, and Larry LeJour. That's our first 5. If you guys would just, you can stand over on the side and make a line that makes it easier for everybody and don't have to shuffle each time. We appreciate you guys helping. All right, Mason, you have the floor. It will be. You're good.
As you may know, since the 1980s, there's been a growing trend away from physical in-person voting. As far back as the 1880s, we see tabulators being used to count and measure ballots and voter fraud. Yet somehow, less than 46 days before Election Day and less than 16 days before absentee ballots go out, we find ourselves here discussing proposals on matters that would change the election processes of some of the most decisive elections in the entire United States. It's quite hard for me to believe that these century-old issues are being brought up 2.5 weeks before game time. Now, unlike some, I will show no animosity towards this board for proper scrutiny, but when your scrutiny borders on paranoia that infringes on electoral voice, it doesn't seem constitutional. Many of us would argue this policy questioning the validity of machines designed for elections, allowing human error to affect results, and positioning poll watchers in tabulation centers full of personal information crosses that line. I'm quite aware that the board I'm addressing is largely Republican and that the opposition is largely Democrat. I'd also like to mention that I don't care. This is a matter of protecting the rights of citizens, and that should permanently remain bipartisan. No matter what political lens you want to view this through, this proposal has no grounds of protecting the uniformity, safety, and efficiency of our elections. I will not pretend to possess any expertise in these matters of logistics, but presuming our shared goal is for every citizen of Georgia to vote in this election and get their vote counted, there's no way that any of these proposals infer a fair election. I ask you, anyone, please explain to me how printing 2 more ballots for anyone who wants to vote absentee or early has to be printed in the next 2 weeks would ensure we have a fair election. I ask anyone who questioned voter fraud in the last election, how do you think that people unsealing the ballots and then counting them themselves by hand would ensure in any way that there would be less voter fraud? I ask anyone who questioned safety in the last election, how would poll watchers, volunteers, which I'm not discrediting in any way, being positioned in tabulation centers where reconciliation is happening, prevent people from seeing personal information of voters? Please reconsider this matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Mason. Next up is Natalie Crawford.
Chair, Board, thank you very much. Again, I'm Natalie Crawford, founder of Georgia First, a cross-partisan nonprofit whose mission includes ensuring election access and security. We always seek to put people over politics. The instability, injustice, and confusion introduced into the public councils have in truth been the mortal disease under which proper governments have everywhere perished. Those are the words of James Madison. And as a lifelong Republican, I fear we are living in his worst nightmare. I'm appalled by the recent actions of this board, the hyperpartisan behavior, and its embrace of ill-informed, conspiracy theory-fueled rulemaking. The recent actions of the board sow chaos and dramatically undermine trust in our constitutional republic and its democratic processes. For this reason, I wish to inform this board, Georgia First will file an amicus brief in support of the lawsuit filed by Eternal Vigilance Action, Scott Turner, and James Hall. We concur with all accounts outlined in the complaint and support the relief requested. The board's attempts to legislate through rulemaking violate the state election code and our Constitution's separation of powers and non-delegation mandates. Simply put, this appointed board has exceeded its legal authority by mandating a vague, undefined inquiry into election results before county election boards can even certify, risking unnecessary certification delays across all parties and races. Ordering county election boards to provide any individual board member with unlimited election-related documentation prior to certifying and without any justification, adding onerous new restrictions on absentee voting, and lastly, requiring recorded video surveillance of early voting drop boxes. These rules are unlawful because your authority doesn't permit you to define, certify, and our election code clearly outlines certification timing and requirements. The 500 pages of the Georgia Election Code specify the timing, manner, and method for producing and maintaining election-related documents. One final point I'll make, and then I'll submit these to you so you can see the full comments, is that drop boxes not permitting video surveillance was in fact by the General Assembly in 2021 declined. They declined to adopt video surveillance requirement in SB 202, which means this board is intentionally usurping the role of the Georgia General Assembly. In closing, our Constitution guarantees the right of suffrage. That means that all qualified Georgians may vote and have their votes counted. Your board cannot stand in the way of that. Thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you, Natalie. Okay, I'll go ahead and call up Elizabeth Hendrickson and Tate Fall. Y'all can get in line because you're going to be coming up soon. Next, we have Brooke.
Schreiner.
Yes, Brooke Schreiner. Thank you.
Good morning, Board. Brooke Schreiner, Butts County Board of Elections Registration, Gaviria member, and Region 6 leader. I, as well as my colleagues, urge you to refrain from voting on the proposed rules this close to an election. We are currently in the critical stages of election preparation, which includes setting up voting machines, training poll clerks, and organizing election night procedures. Additionally, some counties are in the initial phases of preparing for a potential March election as well, and these efforts require significant planning and focus. As per election law, counties are prohibited from making certain changes within 90 to 60 days before an election. I believe the same consideration should apply to rule changes by this board. While we do not oppose many of the rules being processed, the timing could certainly be improved. Regarding the rule on election night ballot counting, requiring the poll manager and 2 clerks to individually count ballots from the scanner would unnecessarily delay election day tabulation. Poll managers and workers are already tasked with sealing all ballots, securing the memory cards, ensuing all recap sheets are accounted for, which is then transported to the tabulation center. Adding this additional step would slow down the 2 required uploads for an election night reporting. Furthermore, many poll workers and managers take time off from their regular jobs for election day duties and return to work the following day. The requirements for them to return the next day at the poll manager's discretion is impractical for many polling locations. Finally, I encourage the board to consult a variety of counties, small, medium, large, not just larger counties like Fulton and Cobb. To ensure the rules are practical and beneficial across all types of election jurisdictions. Thank you for your attention to these concerns.
Thank you, Brooke. You're the first one that really hit the number on the head. It's a good job. Thank you. Appreciate that. All right, next up we have Barbara Gooby.
Hi, I'm from Chatham County. I've been a poll watcher, poll clerk, and now poll manager. I believe the proposals being discussed today introduce huge opportunities for chaos, error, voter insecurity, and therefore, as we heard, lawsuits. Please know that every poll worker and elections board worker I've ever worked with has always acted absolutely professionally, taking every precaution to ensure that all ballots are accurately counted. Using the current procedures, they are. The elections board trains us never to touch the ballots. Only the voter handles their printed ballot and enters it into the ballot box. This assures voters that no one has interfered with their ballot. The proposals for hand counting, both absentee and election day ballots, destroys this assurance. They also introduce the very real opportunity for all too human error, as does introducing poll watchers to the tabulation centers. The current electronic voting system works well and accurately. I'd like to know further how the state elections board proposes to fund these proposals. My pay covers training, setting up the polling place, and working 16+ hours on election day. I start at 5:30 in the morning and may be finished by 9:30 p.m., by which time my brain and I are pretty much mush. To hand count the ballots, we would need the following resources: time to rest between election day and hand counting, pay for all additional hours worked, magnifiers because the print on the ballots is teensy, someone to guard each precinct and ballot box when we're not there, security while we are counting, any additional rent or costs to occupy the polling places during hand counting, and training on specifics of the hand counting process. Finally, to expect each of the 159 county boards of elections to design and carry out training by November 5th is simply unrealistic. It is also unrealistic, unnecessary, and costly to have each county further distinguish absentee from provisional ballots. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. That was right in the times. While I'm at it, I'm gonna go ahead and ask Valerie Kennedy, Marissa Powell, Ellen Apt, Jacqueline Isaacson to come forward to get in line, please. And next we have Larry Lazur.
Hello, I'm a voter from Cherokee County. Here we are again with the SEB throwing more last-minute curveballs, conspiracy-inspired rules, and additional work on these citizen volunteers, even when those actually doing the work have explained how your multitude of requests are either overly burdensome or outright unworkable. Some, as also explained, flout the law. The multitude of conflicts of interest, the blatant partisanship, and the level of incompetence and disregard for the rules seems to define this board and itself. When what has been referred to as the 3 pit bulls called for an illegal meeting in July, the excuse stated by one of the pit bulls at that time was, quote, "No one told us we could not do it," unquote. 2 weeks later, the pit bulls had to withdraw all of their work due to the illegal nature of that meeting. If the rules, the law, the actual workers in the field, logic and reason are being ignored, then who is calling the shots here? It's published knowledge that the partisan political leaders of their party have been in direct communication with some of the pit bulls. One of the groups from the last meeting pushing these rule changes even brought in Ken Cuccinelli and Hans von Spakovsky, 2 co-authors of the objectively anti-American manifesto Project 2025, to push their agenda. That tells you something about who's calling the shots. They construct almost plausible rationalizations under a facade of fairness. Some of these rationalizations are close to accurate, close to the truth, just a step away in most cases. These rationalizations are just tiny steps from the truth, tiny corruptions, but they add up. Then before you know it, you find your position here and the truth over there. Most Americans strive for the American ideals of honesty, integrity, and justice. Deceit does not fit into these ideals. Some here previously brought up biblical passages, and there are some on deceit that I can share, particularly in Psalms and Proverbs. But assuming everyone here is familiar with those, I will instead share my own observations in closing. Those who deceive truly deceive themselves, because while they do not realize it, deception is also a confession. Those who deceive are in fact confessing they themselves recognize that their position is weak or illegitimate and so cannot speak honestly. Those who deceive are confessing that they know full well the truth is not on their side, and so take an approach that is less than fully truthful. I wanted to also close by thanking all the poll workers that are here doing tireless work. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. I appreciate your comments. Next, we have Elizabeth Hendrickson up.
Good morning. There are several groups of people responsible for making certain that Georgia's elections are secure, fair, and accessible. The legislature makes laws governing the process, and their part is done for now. This board provides some oversight and sets or clarifies some policies and rules. This part should be done by now. It is time for you to stop making new rules. The Secretary of State's office sets some policies and guidelines and operationalizes the law. The county election staff apply the laws, policies, and rules to operate elections. The citizens become informed, thoughtful voters. While some of these duties overlap, great care needs to be taken to ensure the groups do not interfere with the duties of one another. Most of the recently enacted and proposed rules have been brought by presumably well-meaning citizens who are in many cases not electoral professionals or experts. Most of their concerns are based on highly unlikely what-if scenarios rather than anything evidence-based. There is a fine line between citizen oversight and citizen micromanagement. And some of these rules, particularly those that specify how many ballots should be in a pile for counting, for example, clearly cross that line. Concerned citizens have every right to be heard, but board members should give far more weight to the views of the professionals who have the experience and the duty to keep our elections fair, secure, and accessible. As called for by a number of county election boards, it is past time to stop making new rules. A quiet period of 90 days before an election makes sense, and we are only about 45 days from the November 5th election. Now is the time for election officials to train workers, perform security protocols, print ballots, and mail absentee ballots. Now is not the time for election officials to be learning and planning training on new rules and procedures. Please do your part in keeping Georgia's elections secure and accessible. Stop making the new rules. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Your timing is good. Next up, we have Tate Fall. On deck is Valerie Kennedy.
Good morning, Chair, Board, Director Cohen, and staff members. Thank you for having us here today. I wanted to start by kind of remembering that modern election administration only started 24 years ago, right? Because of Bush v. Gore. And so much has changed in those 24 years. A lot has changed since 2020, just in the last 4 years. The equipment, how we vote, when we vote, the members of our county boards, the members of the state board, so much has changed. But what hasn't changed is the passion and the purpose of the nonpartisan election officials that make up our state of Georgia. And I want to join with my staff, other election officials that are here today. We represent 11 different jurisdictions, just over 2 million registered voters, which is a fourth of the registered voters here in Georgia. We range from jurisdictions of 9,000 to 655,000. And we are asking that you, as a board, mirror the NVRA status of 90-day quiet period that boards in my county of Cobb, Gwinnett, Athens County, and Muskogee County have also asked for a 90-day quiet period prior to the election. The reasons for that is yesterday, Cobb County emailed just over 1,000 ballots to our uniformed and overseas voters. Today, we mailed 70 ballots to uniformed and overseas voters. The first ballots are out the door. The election has officially begun. Additionally, we're only 17 days away from mailing regular absentee-by-mail ballots. We are just 25 days away from advanced in-person voting starting and 46 days from Election Day. In Cobb, we've already trained all of our AIP workers, and to bring them back in and retrain them on new procedures at this time is not only time prohibitive, but very cost prohibitive and is not a good use of our taxpayer dollars. So again, we join together to implore you to mirror a 90-day quiet period on all rules. Thank you.
Thank you, Tate. That was timely again. You guys have timed your speeches. That's great. Appreciate your words. Valerie Kennedy, you're up next.
My name is Valerie Kennedy. I'm a resident of DeKalb County, Georgia. I'm a former election worker, and I'm a data nerd, so I'm going to hit you with some facts here. The majority of absentee ballots cast in Georgia in the 2020 presidential election, 548,432, were cast by people aged 66 and over, and the second largest absentee ballots were cast, 389,289 were cast by people between the ages of 45 to 64. Why does this matter? 55% of 2020 votes cast for the Republican presidential candidate in Georgia were cast by people over the age of 65. 52% of votes cast for him in that election were by people between the ages of 45 to 64. The proposed changes to absentee ballots will disproportionately disenfranchise those voters. I'm going to hit you with some facts about voter fraud in general. August 16, 2014, Justin Levitt, professor of Loyola Law School, expert in constitutional law with a focus on election administration, published an investigation covering the years 2000 to 2014 elections, found that out of 1 billion votes cast, that's B like Betty billion, 31 were found to be fraudulent. I also want to remind the board that on November 13, 2020, the Federal Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency issued a statement The November 3rd election was the most secure in American history. The head of that agency, Christopher Krebs, was hand-chosen by Donald Trump to lead that agency. Ken Block, an expert data analyst, was hired by Trump's team in November of 2020 to investigate election fraud and found zero evidence of it. Trump lost 61 of 62 of his voter fraud lawsuits, with one of his lawyers, Rudy Giuliani, saying, "We've got lots of theories, we just don't have the evidence." I'd also like to point that 80 million voters in 2020 did not vote. So the idea that people are going out of their way to commit fraud when they are eligible to vote is a bit of a stretch for me. Lastly, 2 weeks ago, at the Lex Friedman podcast, Donald Trump said, not sarcastically, that he lost the 2020 election by a whisker. We know that these proposed changes are designed to give him the advantage, and they're nothing more than voter disenfranchisement, voter suppression, and voter election and worker intimidation. Thank you.
Thank you, Valerie. I appreciate your words. I'm gonna go ahead and call it the next five. Marcy McCarthy, Jane Branscombe, Sam Collier, Alicia Friedland, I believe is the way it was read. So you guys can go ahead and get in line, please. And next we have Marissa Pyle.
Hi, board members. My name is Marissa Pyle. I'm the Senior Democracy Defense Manager at All Voting is Local Action, a nonpartisan organization that advocates for policies and legislative procedures that expand voter access, not limit it. I am testifying in opposition to both proposed rules 183-1-14-.02 and 183-1-12.12, both regarding hand counts in elections. These rules present a massive expansion of external risk to the accuracy and security of election results. What we are talking about in plain terms is asking for thousands of people to handle ballots before their totals are known or formally reported without virtually a single safeguard in place. Even without considering the risk of any bad actors, this injects the gross potential for human error to misplace, damage, or misreport these ballots, already being handled by exhausted and overworked poll workers. Adding in the risk of any potential bad actors could lead to situations where our election results are damaged before tabulation even begins. Indeed, the risks are stated plainly in the very rule proposal brought by Ms. Alexander. In the attached email from Secretary of State Elections Director Blake Evans, I quote, "Deciding to have poll workers hand count ballots on election night is not something your poll workers should do. In order to ensure maximum security for voted ballots, poll workers should not prolong the process of removing ballots from ballot boxes and sealing them in transport containers. This process should be done efficiently, transparently, and immediately after the polls have closed and votes have been cast. Simply put, this board and those before it cannot have it both ways. We cannot claim that it is a short chain of custody for ballots is paramount, while also passing rules that vastly expand the handling of ballots, including prior to results being calculated. What this rule means is that election staff, many of whom are here today, are wedged into an ever more crushing situation of needing to perform superhuman feats under rules that make it virtually impossible for them to do their job. There is unprecedented scrutiny on even the most minor of human missteps in our elections, and Georgians know that all too well. Further, the Georgia Attorney General has stated that these proposals are not tethered to any statute and are impermissible legislation. To close, this rulemaking process that the board has chosen reflects the allocation of precious time and resources towards solving problems that don't exist. Election staff are begging you to stop what this board is doing. Once again, we are here to consider rules that expressly go against these needs. Why? Who does this serve?
Thank you,
I ask
Marissa.
you to reject these rules.
Thank you, Marissa. Appreciate your comments. Ellen, you're up next, please.
Thank you. I am a mere lowly resident of DeKalb County, and I concur with everything that's been said so far. I object to these rules because of they increase the chance of human error in counting the ballot, and that makes it not a fair election. And the cost and time consumption to the taxpayers of Georgia is better spent elsewhere. Thank you very much.
You're as brief as I've ever seen. Thank you. Appreciate that. You set the record. You've been shut off.
You have the undying appreciation of the chairman.
All right. Let's see here. All right. Next up, we have Jacqueline Isaacson with Marcy McCarthy on deck.
Thank you. I'm from Peachtree City, which is in Fayette County. I've been a poll worker for about 4 years, including serving as assistant manager. Poll workers go through extensive training before the election. Training in my county starts next Tuesday. On the election day, there's a lot of paperwork, a lot of seals, a lot of serial numbers, and a lot of checks and balances at the opening, throughout the day, and at the closing of the polls. I'm glad to serve as a poll worker, even though it can be cumbersome, tiring, and stressful at times. All of these proposals are attempting to remedy problems that don't exist. I'll address two in particular. Hand counting on election day. There are machine counts done at check-in every hour throughout the day and at closing. They're done with, the check-in machines, the voting machines that people use, and the machine in which you insert your ballot. There are existing instructions for any irregularities that I personally have never seen. One time for the Warnock-Walker runoff election, the poll manager required us to hand count the votes, even though it wasn't a requirement and probably a little questionable. We had to do it 3 times because of human error, because the machine was right, the people weren't right. Also, poll watchers at election centers. My fellow poll workers and I receive a modest stipend, but we do this to serve. We're carrying out the election process. The proposed rules will crowd locations, cause chaos in what is already an intense yet organized process, and critically, there's a high potential for personal information being compromised and poll workers being intimidated. In closing, these changes are under the guise of transparency, but if passed, would unnecessarily encumber what are already fair and honest processes. Again, please vote no. These proposals are attempting to remedy problems that don't exist. Thank you very much.
Great job. Thank you for your time and promise on that. Next, we have Marcy McCarthy. I want to go ahead and call out some more names. Maribel Hodges, Michael Beach, Travis Doss. If you guys want to go ahead and get in line, you're certainly welcome to do so. Help everything move orderly. Marcy, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. My name is Marcy McCarthy, and I'm the chair of the Republican Party of DeKalb County, Georgia. We have spent the last 4 years working tirelessly to restore faith, integrity, and trust in our election system. Recently, William Henderson, a concerned citizen, used OCGA 21-2230 to challenge over 5,000 ineligible voters who were based on non-residential registrations and other clear violations. Many have voted from their new addresses, so we're just trying to clean these voter rolls. And this reflects just about 1/8 of the voter roll, the active voter roll population in DeKalb County. At the last DeKalb Elections Board meeting that took place on September 12th, the board flagrantly ignored federal and state laws, passing a resolution to block these challenges, rather than actually taking the time to review them as required by law. In response, Mr. Henderson and the DeKalb Republican Party have filed a lawsuit in DeKalb Superior Court on September 17th, 2024, seeking the board to follow the law and properly process these challenges. We urge the SEB to take immediate action to set clear procedures and enforce compliance with OCGA 21-2230. It is absolutely critical to protect the integrity of our vote by ensuring that ineligible voters are not allowed to dilute the voice of eligible citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcy. That was very good on time and everything. So good job. Okay, next we have Jane Branscombe up. Jane?
Good morning. Candidate Trump praised 3 of you by name as pit bulls fighting for honesty, transparency, and victory. You are acting like pit bulls and pushing through new rules without proper transparency, input, and deliberation. And I'm sure there are many in this room who believe the drumbeat lie that there was widespread fraud in the 2020 election, who will think you're fighting for honesty and transparency. But given that the system we have has been proven over and over and over again to be free of any systematic fraud and all but the most trivial and innocent irregularities, your moves instead are promoting chaos, election worker distress, and voter anxiety. The third objective of your actions that the former president stated gets straight to the heart of the matter: victory. Specifically, his victory. Your actions attempt to stack the deck for a particular outcome, and that is the definition of anti-democratic. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you, Jane, for your comments. Sam Collier, you're up next.
Thank you. My name is Sam Collier, longtime resident of Georgia, and I'm pleased to talk to you today. It's interesting. I feel like there's 2 movements, 2 tribes in the room. There's a movement, people who are just assured that there's a problem in their direction, and some others are assured there's a problem in their direction. And so I think we're all here because we're concerned about something, and I think we ought to acknowledge that we all come here out of a sense of concern. I would say, though, that because we have 2 different feeds, a blue feed and a red feed, which have now turned into algorithms, if you believe something and you click on things you believe, before long, you get deeper and deeper into those because the algorithm leads you in that direction. So my algorithm doesn't lead me to believe that there's widespread voter fraud that nobody has happened to find out, and $750 million later court verdict shows that it's probably not even true, and that if you espouse that in your algorithm, you may be liable. I tend to believe that having watched polls at every step, from closing the polls to the late night, bringing all of the returns into a county headquarters, to opening absentee ballots the day after and certifying absentee ballots, that if you disrupt the process that's been worked out for so long, you will create far more chaos and far more headlines and far more lawsuits and far more grief than you ever imagined. And I would truly urge the three pit bulls to take that into account as you decide whether you're going to pass this vote today. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Appreciate your comments. Akiva Fredlin, did I get that right?
Pretty close.
Close enough.
Good morning.
Okay. We're
I'm
playing
Akiva,
golf.
Akiva Friedland.
Friedland.
Good
Okay, very
morning.
good. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, honorable board members. I'm an attorney at the ACLU of Georgia, where we work to ensure that voting is easy and accessible for all Georgians. I ask you to wisely reject all 11 petitions in the rulemaking phase today, especially asking you to vote against the revisions to 183-1-12.12 about hand counting ballots in polling places, and 183-1-14.02 about hand counting at early vote locations. These amendments add needless extra burdens for our local officials. They would impose a large expense of financial resources and staff time that counties can hardly spare. They will cause further delays and risk missing crucial legal deadlines that will lead to litigation. And that is why our hardworking election officials from around the state are raising the alarm at every stage. I've also just learned that this morning, the Attorney General's office sent this board a letter stating that these rules are not tethered to any statute and thus are likely the precise type of impermissible legislation that agencies like this board cannot do. I hope that you have time to read that letter before you vote today. The timing of the rules is especially problematic. By taking effect on October 10th, the rules would wreak havoc just 5 days before the early vote period begins and 21 days before the election. That's also long after September 17th, when counties have begun sending absentee ballots to our service members overseas so they can be in this process. How are we going to change rules that affect absentee ballots 23 days after counties have been instructed to start mailing them out? Again, as the AG's letter advised you this morning, it is far too late for last-minute rulemaking that will create significant confusion for voters and burdens on local administrators. Finally, one last point about the amendment to 183-1-14.02. It is incorrectly written. It references precinct poll officers, a position that does not exist during the early vote period, and it calls for precinct reconciliation of ballots, which is impossible during early voting because there you have polling places are vote centers, not precincts. Authors of petitions should know the difference, and the board should refrain from codifying people's misunderstandings. As you decide today, please put the needs of Georgia voters first, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Friedland. Next up, we have Mary Bell Hodges.
Hi, good morning, Mary Bell, Gwinnett County. I am one of the people as enumerated in the Georgia Constitution. And I think we've lost sight of a few standing fundamentals, but first I'm going to say any way that we can tighten up elections at a very local, drill down level, that is critical to a free, fair elections, and it's critical to the people having feeling that it's transparent. The abnormal behavior that has happened over inquiry at the county level and the state level over the last 2 years of elections, that's what gives me pause. It's the abnormal behavior. Why are the ballots being held hostage? Why aren't the people who are the public servants are accountable to in Georgia, why aren't the public servants allowing us to see the accountability? So if you're so certain, if you're so 100% certain that everything is perfect in elections, show us the ballots. They belong to the people. We can do it with a custodian, but we can't even see the ballots to see a reconciliation. So yes, we need the rules at the lowest level to ensure accountability and reconciliation there. You wouldn't go to the bank teller and see her run the money through your process and walk away without counting it yourself. Our ballots are as precious as money and gold. They need to be guarded, and the people need to know. So I am in support of the bills, but this continuing of dismissing people's inquiry, just saying, well, it's a fraud, those court cases the evidence hasn't even been looked at. So let's have a real conversation. You are public servants. You need to address what the people's concerns are. And all these people are welcome to come and speak. But election superintendents, supervisors, you are public servants as well. You are answerable to the people, not to NGOs, not to Democracy Now! You're answerable to the people. Thank you.
Hold on. Next up, we have Michael Beach.
Thanks. I'm Boomer, got paper.
My name is Dr. Michael Beach. I'm speaking as an assistant poll manager. There are only 25 days until early voting opens, and I ask you, as you've heard already, that you respect county election officials across the state who've been asking you for a 90-day moratorium on rule changes before any election. It's too late for changes. Some process thoughts. I believe board members want a process to hear full, accurate, and truthful discussion on rule changes before voting. Instead, I see a process where individuals submit proposals and often air false narratives and reference misleading or false information. I'm not aware of any other rulemaking process that hears seemingly unlimited oral presentation from the petitioner with no oral process for listening to other perspectives. I ask you to develop a process where decisions are based on a full, well-rounded, and fact-based summary for each proposal. I'd like to ask what the board's trying to accomplish when they are doing this. I haven't heard you ask petitioners, what problem are you trying to solve? What documentation says that such a problem exists? Why do we need this? We should be using accurate data and information to identify key areas for improvement, to target our limited time and resources. Attempting to make such a complex process error-free is resulting in over-bureaucratization by massing layer upon layer of rules, which may likely increase errors. We have to accept that this has become an argument between a belief that elections are not secure and the facts that they are secure. Changing beliefs cannot be accomplished easily. There will always be new beliefs requiring endless new rules. Finally, I've been through the proposed rules. I won't get into details. You've heard some of them. Much of what I see is already part of the polling place protocol. I wish petitioners would become poll workers and thoroughly study poll worker manuals so we could focus on needed improvements. So in summary, we should weigh the facts about the security of our elections, the impact of increased staff turnover, the increased difficulty recruiting poll workers, and the efficient use of taxpayer money so Georgia continues to have secure elections. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate your comments. Okay, let's go ahead and get the next 5 in line. We've got Connie Adams, Kevin Muldowney, Kathleen Hamill, Lisa Rutherford, and we'll go ahead and do Matt Ravensick as well. That's the next 5. God bless you.
You win a big prize. You just become the chairman's favorite.
Thank you, Ms. Rutherford. We appreciate that. And I'll go ahead and mark you as present. All right, next up we have Travis Doss.
Good morning. My name is Travis Doss, and I serve as the Executive Director of the Richmond County Board of Elections. With over 29 years of experience in election administration, I currently hold the position of President of the Georgia Association of Voter Registration and President of the Voter Registration and Election Officials. I have previously served as President of the Voter Registrars Association. I am both a certified Georgia election official and a certified election administrator. I'm here today to respectfully request that you delay your decision on the 11 proposed rules currently under consideration. Federal law mandates a 90-day quiet period for any changes to voter registration and core election procedures. State law requires a 60-day notice for polling place changes and precinct adjustments. Current SEB regulations necessitate a 30-day notification of any voters if you are changing a polling place. Should you approve these rules today, they will not legally take effect until October the 11th, leaving us only 25 days until Election Day. 25 days is an extremely limited window, especially when we are this close to the election. This is akin to entering the 3rd trimester of pregnancy nearing the due date. Now is simply not the time to implement sweeping changes that could create unnecessary confusion and disruption. As recent history shows, election changes made in the final stage often becomes the focal points of post-election controversy. In 2018, Stacey Abrams attributed her loss to the gubernatorial race to changes made by then Secretary of State Brian Kemp. In 2020, Donald Trump blamed Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger for voting methods and absentee ballot changes. In 2024, whoever loses will likely look for a similar scapegoat, and these last-minute rule changes may become the reason. Please do not provide additional grounds for confusion or blame. I urge you to take this into consideration and delay your decision on these proposed rules. Thank you.
Thank you, Travis. Appreciate your comments. Next, we have Connie Adams.
My name is Tony Adams. I'm the election supervisor in Heard County, Georgia. I'm a member of Gavrio. Imagine, if you will, the national championship football game. Everyone has been anticipating this matchup between the teams for 4 years. Fans of both teams are waiting to take part in the game to root for their side. However, there is a small group of fans who do not like the way the game is being played, so they have decided to approach the 5 commissioners of the Football League to change the rules less than 2 months before the game. 3 of these commissioners think it's a good idea to change the rules, despite the pleadings of the officials on the field who would be the referees and must understand the rules the games the players and fans operate under. The other two commissioners have made the point that changing the rules this close to the playing of the game might confuse the players on the field, the referees, and the fans watching the game. The game officials have been told that the rule changes the commissioners have proposed are common sense rule changes. This is all despite the fact that some of the changes the fans in the peanut gallery have proposed violate the official rules of the game as written by the overarching body who determines the final say of how the game is played. Some of the rules contain changes the commissioners are not even allowed to make because they lack the statutory authority to make those changes. So despite the pleas of their fellow commissioners, the referees on the field, the concerned fans, they decide to go forward with these changes. The game time approaches, and no one is sure what the rules are because of all the confusion the new rules have caused. The game is played. As the action unfolds, the referees do their best to implement the new rules. However, the confusion with the new rules causes there to be irregularities. During the post-game news conference, the media asked the commissioners why there was so much confusion on the field. In response, the commissioners who proposed the new rules so close to the game say that the new rules were common sense rules. So the problem must have been with the officials tasked with their implementation. Is this what will happen when confusion leads to inconsistencies with the November 5th, 2024 election? Who will be given the blame when new rules cause chaos?
Thank you, Tony. Appreciate your comments. Let's go ahead and add some more folks on the line, please. Matt Rowansack, Milton Kidd, Joseph Kirk, Julie Adams, and Ethan Compton, please. If you guys will get in line, that'd be great, very helpful. I think I called everybody. Okay, Kevin Muldowney, you got the floor.
Good morning. Kevin Muldowney. I'm worked as a poll worker, poll watcher, at poll tech, absentee ballot adjudication. I firmly support the proposed rules before this board and sincerely want to thank you all for your hard work. These rules will give much needed support, transparency, and clarity to existing Georgia election law. We are, after all, a constitutional republic. We are governed by laws, and clarity of those laws is of utmost importance. It's hard to imagine how anyone interested in free and fair elections could oppose any of them. Gavrio, a suspiciously partisan group, is trying to make any argument they can to stop the process. These proposed rules will increase confidence in our voting process and will be virtually invisible to the voters' experience. On to the issue of an election monitoring team for Fulton County. The very reason an election oversight team was ever considered was due to the fact of documented and very real manipulation of past elections by Fulton County Elections Department. Both Ryan Germany and the Carter Center have gone on record praising the supposed accuracy and perfect result of the 2020 election. That in itself completely disqualifies both of these entities. If the decision is made after fully adjudicating Rossi Moncla, then we do in fact need a monitoring team. That team should be carefully chosen and approved by this board in its entirety. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin, very much. Your timing was great. Thank you for your comments. Okay, next up we have Kathleen Hamill. And Matt, you're on deck.
Good morning. My name is Kathleen Hamill, and I'm here today on behalf of the nonpartisan Georgia Democracy Task Force. We believe deeply in the integrity of our current voting system. Our system is safe, it is secure, not perfect, it has stood the test of time. But today, I must express our grave concern over the proposed 11 rules. These rules threaten to upend our election process in just 46 days. The earliest these rules could take effect is October 14th. That's 1 week after counties begin mailing absentee ballots. It is 1 day before early voting starts, and it is long after overseas and military ballots must be mailed, which is by September 21st, tomorrow. This timeline is not just tight, it is impossible. Imagine the uncertainty and the confusion and the added burden on election workers and county budgets. These rules do not protect our elections, they undermine them. Our Georgia election laws are among the most robust in the nation. They have been tested, they have been audited, they work. The U.S. Supreme Court has warned us about this very situation. In the Purcell decision, the court cautioned against last-minute rule changes. Such changes confuse voters, they erode trust, they compromise election integrity. We, the Georgia Democracy Task Force, cannot stand by and allow this 11th hour attempt to thwart our system. It is undisputed that your job is to represent all voters in the state of Georgia and to ensure fair, legal, and orderly elections. These last-minute rule changes make it impossible for you to fulfill that duty. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen. We appreciate your comments. Next up, we have Matt Rowansack, Milton Kidd, you're on deck.
All right, good morning, board. First of all, as a Georgia voter, and especially since I'm a Fulton County voter, I'm very much in support of the rules before you today. They make a whole lot of logical sense, and I'd ask for your approval today. And many of the comments before, not once have talked about ensuring the accuracy of the election. And there is evidence of previous issues that we could talk about for pretty much all day. Secondly, watching the Gabrielle group's behavior, in my opinion, you're losing credibility. Let me give you an example. The claim that counting the number of physical ballots as a means of reconciliation undermines confidence. So is it Gabrielle's official position that you do not believe in reconciliation? Let's pretend for a second that Georgia and the United States and many countries around the world hasn't done this for decades upon decades upon decades, and outside the US, centuries upon centuries. Let's pretend that someone appears at the bank. They give 5 $20 bills, and the bank gives you a deposit slip of $80. You say, I gave you $100. The teller says, the receipt says 80. You say, well, count the bills I gave you. The teller responds, I'm sorry, that's no longer our procedure. The person says, well, will you do reconciliation at the end of the day? They say, no, sorry, that's no longer our procedure either. But I gave you $100. Sorry, sir. Receipt says $80. And if you want an example of evidence, let me remind you of what happened in 2022 in DeKalb in the primary. This very rule would have prevented Michelle Long Spears, who ended up in last, when they counted the physical ballots, which this rule isn't even counting the results, it's just the ballots themselves, went from last place with about 3,000 votes to over 6,500 votes, and she won the race. This rule is very important. It makes a lot of sense, and you would never advocate for no reconciliation in your daily lives because you would be raising hell. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Muldowney. Thank you for your comments. Next up, we have Milton Kidd.
My name is Milton Kidd. I'm the elections director for Douglas County. I have a full set of my responses to the proposed rules, but I'm going to throw that out. History is watching. The world is watching. What we do here today matters, and what we do here today is important. To the last commenter, we do reconciliation. Every elections office does reconciliation, not physically counting the ballots by poll workers that have worked 16 hours and getting an accurate count, because they're just counting the physical ballot. Charged with conducting elections is absurd to me. For the board members that want to implement these rules, because they're most likely going to implement them because they have the numbers, I challenge you to go into any county in the state of Georgia and to do the rules that you're passing on today. Work as a poll worker all day and then count the ballots. We all have given our lives. Most of us work decades in these career paths. And to say that we don't know what we're talking about, you wouldn't say that to any other professional. I've stayed at a lot of Waffle Houses in my life, but that does not qualify me to operate a Waffle House. Listen to the experts. You can't even make this up. The world is watching what we do here today. The world is going to hold us accountable for the decisions that we make. It matters. If this is how we're governing ourselves, let's be adults in the room and not push partisan ideology and partisan issues. Let's make rules that make sense and listen to the people. Let the people vote.
Okay. Let me just say for the record, that was not a paid advertisement for Waffle House.
Thank you for your comments, Milton. Okay, next up we have Joseph Kirk. Let's go ahead and get these last. These are the last ones on the list for today's speaking. No applause, please.
Yes, please, no applause.
Sandy Shepke, Richard Schroeder, Christian Neighbors, and Syra Draper. Please get in line, and that'll conclude today's comments after those folks have spoken.
That'll conclude the morning comment session.
Yes.
We will have an afternoon comment session.
Yes. Joseph Kirk, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Joseph Kirk. I'm the election supervisor from Bartow County. I've been in that position since 2007. I'm also the president-elect of Gabrielle. Like my other members that are here today, I'm here to speak on behalf of myself, not my organization. But I would like to flag that Gabrielle did submit comments about proposed rules. I'm not going to step through each rule today, but I do welcome folks to read those comments. If you do, you will see, for example, we have never stood against reconciliation, just in the procedure outlined in rule. There's other ways to do it. What I'm here to do today is to alert y'all that in my professional opinion, these rules go beyond the statutory authority of the board. And from what I've heard this morning, both the Secretary of State and the Attorney General have advised you of pretty much the same thing. The idea of passing rules on the assumption that someone would stop you if you were wrong is no different than an unqualified voter or a person applying for a ballot on the assumption that my office is going to stop them if they can't vote. And I've had to turn folks into y'all for that before. I ask that rather than pass the rules today, that you slow down and work with us as election professionals to craft rules that work within the law, rather than attempting to fill perceived gaps in the law. Acknowledge the practical realities of modern election administration, achieve the goals as efficiently as possible, and are passed outside of a 90-day quiet period before any regularly scheduled election. As my colleagues mentioned, the election has already begun. We need to focus on a smooth and orderly election that's conducted in accordance with state law, federal law. We need to focus on instructing our employees and citizens what the rules are and what to expect. And unless there's a true emergency, we need time to put any new procedures in place. I'm here to tell you that time has already passed. Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. Next up, we have Julie Adams.
Good morning. So first of all, I want to thank the SEB members, and we all know that this is a civic duty that you're doing, and we appreciate the time and energy that you have put in and the thoughtfulness. I think that you all are considering some great rules, and I'm really, really interested in all these comments on how harsh this is going to be for our elections. Because as I look at the rules today, we have ones that post things that are elections data for the public to see. We have more poll watchers in the tabulation center. And then the one that is the big complaint is counting the ballots in the polling locations. So I know it's already been mentioned here before, but I want to stress that if you go into the bank, if you drive home on the way to the bank and you go in and say, I want $1,000, a machine is going to count the $1,000. The teller is going to hand count to make sure it's $1,000. And you as the banker, the person or the bankee, I guess, coming in to get the money are going to count and make sure it's $1,000. I don't understand the reconciliation of these ballots and the counting and all the kickback that it's getting. But I just want to say I appreciate all these laws are lawful. They fall within the law. They provide more accuracy and transparency. And I'm interested why we have so many people questioning them. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. We appreciate your comments. Next up is Ethan Compton.
I'm Ethan Compton. I'm a concerned citizen of Wilcox County and the election supervisor of Irwin County. So far this year, rules passed by this board have cost the voters of Irwin County 5 cents per voter. If passed, rules under consideration today could cost them up to 65 cents per voter. That adds up across the millions of voters across Georgia. Almost over 200 pages of elections code and rules have been implemented since 2020. We have practiced on them. We have trained. We are prepared. We are ready. Do not change this at the last second. To bring back the football reference that Supervisor Adams brought up, it's not 2 minutes before the game. Military ballots have already been issued. We have started. The election has begun. We are in the middle of voting. This is not the time to change the rules. That will only lower the integrity of our elections and lower the integrity of what we do. Personally, there are 159 counties, and they each have different methods to comply with the law. My county does hand reconcile our ballots. We are blessed with the resources to be able to do so. We do hand count to make sure each precinct matches up. What we don't do is this rules opinion to have it done at the end of a 16+ hour day with tired poll workers that will only invite inaccuracy and will be done without maintaining a secure chain of custody. Don't break my seals. Don't break my chain of custody. What we do, we have the poll watcher's view. We log it. We log the seals on the ballot container and bring it back to our office. The public is open to observe our hand reconciliation, where we do match up per precinct, exactly how the rule says, into batches of 50. And we make sure that those seals are not tampered with. I have a difference in opinion on this rule because you're violating the integrity of those ballots. You're violating the chain of custody. Others have other perfectly good reasons, but trying to have this be counted at the end of an election day will only invite errors. Please vote no. Please work with us. Try to make sure that these rules are more carefully thought out to be successful ones that we can implement correctly. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Ethan. We appreciate that. Sandy, you're up next, and you've got Richard on deck.
Good morning, board members. I've never done this before, so I'm very excited to be here. I'm a Fulton County voter, And I like to express the need for a good monitoring team for Fulton County for this election. The Ryan German proposal is full of rot and conflict of interest, and the same old playbook of the create the narrative that everything is fine in Fulton County is not the case. I will give you an example of what's going on in Fulton elections now. In their training for their poll workers, they're telling them not to ask questions when if they ask questions, they will get dinged. And we all know what happens when we get dinged. That means letting them go. They're being told essentially that if someone walks into a poll and doesn't look like the picture of the person in the ID, that they're supposed to not ask questions. Does that sound like a county that's improved or firmly committed to following the law? The same county where two of its election board members are on lawsuit against this body, the same board of members in 2022 that recertified the results with zero documentation in front of them. A good monitoring team is needed. Lastly, the rules that are before you today, I think are excellent and should be approved. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Sandy. You did a great job. Appreciate you. All right, next up, we got Richard and Kristen Neighbors, you're on deck. And Syra, you're going to black clean up. So thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
I'm Richard Schroeder. First of all, this isn't my speech. I'm a U.S. Army veteran. I took an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States of America. I'm also a poll worker in Hall County. I'm the tabulator lead. I take the paper ballots out of the tabulator, put them in a container. I'll stay till as long as it takes to count those ballots and make our elections better. Not going to what I got. Although in the 2020 election, there was a significant lack of confidence in Georgia election systems, with many electors concerned about allegations of rampant voter fraud. This sentence is in this book probably 100 times. They put it as an editor's note after just about every law. They had to address the problems that were evident in the 2020 election. The changes made in this legislation in 2021 are designed to address the lack of elector confidence in the election system. I appreciate this current board and the progress in obtaining these goals for fair elections. However, the latest efforts last summer from our legislator does little to address the issues that plague our voting system today. We're still using the vulnerable electronic voting machines. We're running elections through an illegal QR code and sealing the electors' readable ballots, as in 300, into containers that are stored in various locations around the state with questionable chain of custody in place. Going back to last December, we had a SEB meeting on December 20th when Garland Favorito and Marlon Marks was petitioning the board. There was hardly a dozen people in attendance, much unlike the previous day when the room was packed out. There was a motion to make the sealed paper ballots available to the County Board of Elections and to the public. The motion died with no second to motion from the rest of the board. The current board has come a long way since that fateful day in December. We're actually passing rules that will make our elections more transparent and believable. These changes promote improvements for future elections. The motion to unseal the paper readable ballots from the previous elections will not only address the confidence and integrity of our elections, but it could actually be the key to the questionable outcome that created the mistrust of the public. I make a plea today for this board to pass the motion, unseal our readable paper ballots, let us see our votes. Thank you for my time.
Thank you for your comments, Richard. Next up, we have Kristen Neighbors and Syra Draper on deck.
Thank you, board. My name is Kristen Neighbors. I'm the state director for All Voting is Local Action. We're a nonpartisan organization that advocates for policies and legislative priorities that expand voter access. I'm here today to add my voice to the many election officials who have raised concerns regarding the two rules proposed by Charlene Alexander, which would require hand counts on every voting day. I brought with me 1,872 pages of paper representing what a stack of ballots could look like on a busy counting day. And busier, larger precincts may have even more than this number. If I were to hand this stack of paper to 3 random people in this room, especially at the end of a long voting day, and ask them to arrive at the same total number, do we think that's feasible? Because I personally don't think that's very feasible. Asking our election workers to do this on every voting day is asking for errors. I've personally watched multiple counties conduct full hand counts over the past year. It's normal that many times an hour we can expect small errors to be made, the type of thing where someone's count is off by 1 or 2. This would result in having to count again. We'll also see mistakes where someone says one number when they mean a different one, which can lead to tallies seeming not to match when they actually do. I've also seen more significant errors made, including when one county added up their early vote numbers and the totals were significantly off by about 10%. It took them 3 tries with a weekend of rest in between to tally the numbers correctly, and this was for a race with 2,200 ballots, so not much bigger than the stack here today. I have someone helping me hold the stack because I was too worried it would fall on the floor and make a mess. Like, imagine if those were ballots. None of the errors I've ever witnessed have been due to a machine problem or any type of voter malfeasance. In every single case, it's been a human error. Counting large numbers of anything one by one is an incredibly tedious process and not one humans are well equipped for. People doing a hand count are going to make mistakes, which can then be exploited to spread lies and so further distrust in our elections and our election officials. It's worth noting that a number of election officials have gone on record recently about the threats they've been facing from activists who don't believe our elections are fair. Passing this rule is just going to add fuel to that fire. I urge you to reject these proposals. Thank you.
We appreciate your comments, Kristen. Next up, we have Sarah Draper to finish the morning.
Thank you. Good
Discussions.
morning, everyone. My name is Sarah Draper. I'm the state representative for House District 90. And as I've listened to the comments today, I think a lot about what it means to act in good faith. As a legislator, especially on the minority side, on the minority party side, I try to approach all my conversations with my colleagues in good faith and assuming that they are also operating in good faith, because I believe that even when there are policy differences, you can reach a middle ground. And I think a lot of people here today that have testified and given commentary have presumed you are approaching this issue with good faith. And they have presented to you all of the operational issues, logistical issues, practicalities of implementing these rules so close to election days. And I'm blown away by the number of election professionals, nonpartisan election professionals that have put their names on the line to come up here and talk to you today, because I have been following the state election board for many, many, many years, and I have never seen a reaction to a slate of rules like what I am witnessing today. But I have to say, we're talking about poll workers that have already been trained, right? We are talking about all these last minute changes, and it makes me question whether members of this board are operating in good faith. Here is what I think is happening, because I know there's a bunch of really nice suits and we're in a really nice building, but at the end of the day, I think putting 11, maybe 12 rules into play days before election day is a grift. I think what is happening is we are setting up our counties to fail. Why do we know they're going to fail? Because they are telling you that. They are telling you they cannot implement these rules with the time we have left and with the funds they do not have. They're telling you that. And when these counties fail, when there are inaccuracies, if there is a result of the election that some of the members of this board do not like, they will be able to point to those inaccuracies and they will say that that the election is inaccurate, that there is a lack of integrity in the election. I think the bottom line is, if your purported goal is to bring accuracy and integrity to our election, we now have an overwhelming mountain of evidence that these rules will not achieve that goal. So what are we trying to do here? We're trying to sow chaos. We're trying to invite disruption by putting our counties up to fail. And I think that is exactly what is happening here. I hope you prove me wrong. Thank you very much.
How many total people do we have? Yeah, total sign-ups. All right. There were 53 people that signed up to speak. On the agenda, we had allotted for 30 to speak in the morning, and then the remainder at the end of the meeting. We've gone through the first 30 people, and I appreciate your comments. The board appreciates your comments. At this time, before we start diving into these rules, the chair would entertain a comfort break.
So moved.
We have a motion for a 10-minute comfort break. Do we have a second? All those in favor signify by saying aye. The motion carries 4-0. We'll have a 10-minute comfort break. Thank you.
All right, guys. So what we're going to do is we're going to get back to this later on in the morning or possibly tomorrow morning. What we're going to get back to in our next live is the Fannie Willis hearing on the open records lawsuit. So stay tuned. We're about to log off now, and we're going to finish part 2 of what we were watching yesterday. I want to say I love you and thank you for being here with Grace Levi. We're going to be uploading content like this consistently to keep the people aware, educating them about the political process and also how they can apply some of these methods to their own state, to what's going on around them. So again, I want to say thank you for being with us, and we'll be back shortly.
Would you like to learn a brand new and innovative way to invest your extra money that has a low barrier to entry and low competition? What if I told you that it is a guaranteed method to get up to 18 to 20% return on your investment? Tax lien and deed purchasing is the only way to get into the real estate market through the back door. No credit and no loans needed. This method isn't commonly taught, and therefore the competition is very low, for now. Put together a 14-hour info-packed course which will teach you everything you'll need to know to get started. Learn at your own pace, step-by-step guided video and aids to start you on the TLC deed investment process. The course offers many learning tools for new investors, helping ensure you safely invest in tax liens and deeds. Contact us today and join the buyback team.